Cherokee Nation,
Denina Athabaskan,
Dene,
Pueblo Vasleta,
Chickasaw,
Choctaw,
Anishinaabe Ojibwe,
Mohawk, Micmac.
And so I think being Indigenous at Brown is definitely a lot more academic because you have to be able to educate other people as you educate yourself about your own heritage.
I have to constantly consider my identity and be constantly reminded of how there's, like, I don't see me on campus. I don't see enough of me. I don't see support. I don't see university and institutional-wide support of Native peoples in general.
you know, I was asked like what my race was before, like what is my concentration, or like what do I like to do.
There's just a lot of, there can be some isolation at times, just feeling as if you're like the only person that's going through a lot of struggles and a lot of hardships.
Here I kind of had to like refocus what it was that I was bringing into the space as a Native student.
And I'm only now the second Native person to be in a tenure track position here at the university that we know of. And the university has been open for hundreds of years at this point, so to only have 2 Native women to have been hired in the last 4 years is pretty remarkable.
It means that I have to constantly think about my positionality, especially as someone who's Black and Native, who's multiracial, and how that is related to my Native identity. But it also means that I have, amongst those of us who do hold this Native identity, that we have a small but we have a strong support system for each other.
We're such a marginalized people population that our issues and our problems aren't spoken about enough and aren't addressed enough.
With regard to the academic calendar, the phrase Columbus Day holiday, no university exercises, appeared for the first time in the 1939-1940 Bulletin of the university after Columbus Day was established as a federal holiday by Congress and President Roosevelt in 1937.
The idea of Indigenous Peoples Day was first conceived in 1977 at the International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas.
Silence is what? Violence! Silence is what? Violence! Silence is what? Violence! Justice not demand no peace on stolen land! Justice not demand no peace on stolen land! Justice is our demand no peace on stolen land! Justice is our demand no peace on stolen land! Teachers got to fall! Brick by brick, wall by wall! This takes teachers got to fall! Brick by brick, wall by wall! This takes teachers got to fall! Fall weekend is just an excuse for people to celebrate, and it's just a day off for everyone. And for some people, that means it's Columbus Day. So what we're here to do is we're here to interrupt that sort of leisure that other people get, which we're not getting right now because we're out here trying to fight and trying to prove our resilience. And so if we change the name to Indigenous Peoples Day, we're going to be able to celebrate our resilience. But until then, we're just here while everyone else celebrates our erasure and while everyone else celebrates our genocide. So that's why we're here.
Peoples Day, I think that it's very hard to, it's something that I'm still processing, honestly. I think it's April of a new semester, and it's something that I'm still thinking about, and like still very much holds its impact on me. And I think that's very telling in terms of like the campus as a whole. So when you look at non-Native students, or even some Native students who weren't necessarily a part of like Indigenous Peoples Day organizing, there's a different sense of how you reflect on the events.
Like, I'm so proud of our students who led the activism, and it's mainly like exclusively women, our Native women who are doing it. So that was also like really powerful and inspiring to see our own students holding these identities, doing all this work. So that was empowering.
What is interesting is kind of like the representation of that day and that planning in general. So you have like a lot of the timeline skewed, a lot of people who frame the reason why we held like a protest, inaccurate stories, or certain parts that are forgotten. So for me, it's just like I like to recenter on like the moment when I really went into Indigenous Peoples Day. So originally, like students, younger underclassmen have been planning a kind of day of like remembrance, or for Monday there had been programming that was planned, and we were gonna work together, work with students, and have ourselves a nice Indigenous Peoples Day where we were gonna be together in celebration. And so for me, when I really stepped in as an organizer was when the opinion piece, the editorial, had been released through the Brown Daily Herald.
All Native Americans should celebrate Columbus Day, even if they have reservations about honoring Christopher Columbus himself.
And so I think for me, I still just remember leaving, I believe it was class, going to the Brown Center for Students of Color, seeing like a stack of newspapers that someone had put there to let people know that this article had been released. And reading that article to me was just like such a horrifying moment for me, because like during my time at Brown, there's very little times when like Native students are ever highlighted or asked to speak or anything unless they're trying to make Brown look better. And Native students aren't supported enough here. And so for me, it was just the most disrespectful thing that when underclassmen students who are very like young, like they're freshmen and sophomore students, are organizing to have a nice day together as Indigenous students, and there's going to be an op-ed released in like complete opposition and just erasure of why we're even holding this event in the first place, was just like mind-blowing. I just remember reading it and feeling this like very heavy weight, and knowing that like there were decisions that were made to release a racist op-ed, and people thought that it was fine.
It's just very heartbreaking to know that people who sit next to me in classrooms can have these opinions about my identity, and then in the same breath tell me to be quiet about what I'm experiencing.
Do they know the history that goes behind Christopher Columbus and the values and the philosophy that he brought with himself that affected us so bad, so deeply, and that led to, the pursuit in erasing our history and erasing our people from the face of this land?
The fact that people are even posing the question like continues to perpetuate this erasure and this violence, like this very real violence. When you have something like that, one is upholding this white supremacist and like just these awful like non-factual like rhetoric around like settler colonialism, we have harmful ideologies being perpetuated, and also we have people who are saying, hey, like, this is my identity, like, this is hurtful to me, being ignored.
So Columbus Day is established in honor of Christopher Columbus himself. They're not mutually exclusive. It's the celebration of white people rediscovering America. Is completely negligent of the fact that they were never lost. There was nothing to discover. So claiming that all Native Americans should celebrate the arrival of people who brought nothing but disease and slavery and oppression and competition and food scarcity is such an irrational, absurd idea to me. And it completely, defies logic.
And, all the nonsense in the BDH with, in retrospect, like, maybe she did us all a favor by writing those, and it was painful for people, and it was annoying, and it got people upset, but it also galvanized other parts of campus that were like, no, this is really silly, we need to support NAB in this way. And so it was almost helpful in a funny way to have somebody putting out really ignorant viewpoints, because then that got other people on board.
That was how the die-in on Friday had been planned. It had been planned that day. And we carried it out. And it was like, laying on the ground for like 50 minutes and 23 seconds to like represent like the 523 years of like Indigenous resistance.
It was such a powerful moment to lay there holding this sign in the wind. The wind was blowing and the sign was nearly ripped out of our hands. And it was such an intense moment where fighting the wind sort of reflected the fight that I felt like we were engaged with the university at that time around Indigenous Peoples Day being passed. And it was such, honestly, a visceral experience. The cold of the concrete, the wind blowing, but also the silence.
And so, and I think the die-in was really visually powerful. And so that was something that was really heart-wrenching for me, standing on the sidelines, making sure nobody stepped on you all, but to, have invested so much in all these beautiful humans and they're laying dead on the ground, like, that was awful. And so I hope that had as much of an impact on other people too, who weren't standing on the sidelines, like trying not to weep and keeping back people who were too lazy to like walk around a collective of people laying on the ground. I was like, oh, why didn't I bring blankets? Like, maybe it would have been less symbolic, but they wouldn't look so cold on the pavement right here. But yeah, that was really powerful, I think. And then the following Monday, to have people from the community here on campus was really important, I think, to show that this wasn't just about the students here, but also that, this university is on Native land, and those Native people didn't disappear, they just got shoved off to the side.
This incomplete understanding of the really like interdisciplinary and kind of like interwoven mechanisms of oppression hurts the way in which we're able to organize and understand our history in the present day and on campus, right? And so it hurts Native students, it hurts Black students, it hurts a lot of other students of color by not being able to recognize that it's part of a much larger system. So like Brown's involvement in the slave trade is part of a larger story of this white supremacist project that was the United States.
So I was physically in the meeting where they voted on the final name change, and it was really fascinating, largely supportive, but definitely there were some dissenting voices. And for me, I am still a non-voting faculty member. I won't be a voting faculty member till the fall, so I wasn't there to be able to physically vote, but I was allowed to be in the meeting. And so the proposal was brought up. There was a little bit of discussion. It seemed largely supportive. And then there were about, I'd say, 4 or 5 dissenting voices. And they were folks who were bringing up arguments that were largely things that were already addressed, that had nothing really to do with the issue at hand, because the name change wasn't from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. The Columbus Day was already off the table. That happened in 2009. That was not something we were discussing at the time, yet the conversation still became about Columbus Day. So when we did the actual vote, you do it verbally, you say yay or nay, very old school, but there were only 4 nays that we heard in the entire room. And apparently the turnout was 3 times as many people as usually come to these faculty meetings. So there was a lot of support from the faculty as a whole for the change of the name.
I guess it's really comforting to know that I have support and I have people who can support me like in times of anger and times of like emotional stress. But what really stands out to me is the amazing support of the students of color here, because like they had the words that I couldn't say at the time, and they like wrote them down. The Black Student Union, the Latinx community, the Asian American community, the multiracial community, and like all of these communities of color. That was just like very overwhelming, but also like very nice of them to do that, because like at the time like I couldn't like deal with this whole university or deal with the people here.
So in recognizing like the extent of the harm that the article would publish and people backing those articles and seeing that all play out online, I think really struck a chord with a lot of the students of color here, to not only write the statements but show up for the demonstration, to spread the word, to help organize. And so it was a lot of coalition building and showing up to this one meeting in particular, led by NAB, and realizing that we wanted the same thing, that we were trying to reconcile with our differences too. But I think it was like realizing that ultimately we want justice and we want to be able to live on this campus, like, and not have to worry about racist articles being published about us. It can count so much when we come together and when we're all publishing these statements and all supporting each other in that way, that people realize what we were doing, and we got so much attention because of that so many students of color here were organizing, and there was nobody on this campus who didn't know what was happening. And so I think there was a lot of power in helping that to shape the outcome of Indigenous Peoples Day being passed.
I feel like this university has a tendency to like, when we have these petitions, or when we have these like policies or these things that are in place, it's like, okay, like we did it, like yay, like hopefully that'll quell those students that are complaining. Like I think that's common with administration, and especially in looking at turnover. So like we're only here for 4 years, like they really want to get us out, and like it's like, okay, yeah, we'll work on something, we'll make it this plan, we'll make it like 4 or 5 years, whatever, and then like once we go, they're relying on us to like move out and not be involved, and to have that rich legacy of work and like an activism die out between generations, which I think often does happen. So I'm glad that we have the name change and that we're gradually getting more institutional support. But I mean, just looking at our list of demands, there are many unmet ones, and I mean, we're still waiting.
I guess as I was reading the document that we had published over a year ago, or not even a year ago, that I was thinking about future generations to come here to Brown and learn about student of color organizing, and be able to read the document and feel so, I would say, empowered, and feel so inspired, and view the document also as a way to learn from it and to improve it, and practice it, I think, in their daily lives, because I think that's where it falls short a lot of times, is in practice. That we have these values and we have these beliefs, and we can do all that, we can write these documents, but
it really comes down to what happens in practice. And so I hope not only ourselves who wrote this document, but for students to come and students to learn about the history and realize that was such an important moment for coalition building.
The process around the changing the name to Indigenous Peoples Day, it was just so impressive to me to see the ability and the skills of the students to pull this off. And as I said before, it was largely driven by the undergraduates and was textbook community organizing to kind of see the way they were able to coalition build among the other students of color on campus and really draw up the support that was needed, because when you have just such a small student population, you need to have that support across campus. So to see the die-in and see hundreds of students laying out there and participating, and then to see the celebration on Indigenous Peoples Day and how the local community drove hours to come out and drum and be as supportive, and to have a round dance on the main green that had hundreds of people involved, and to know that that all came from the students, and that on top of taking their classes and on top of writing their papers and doing their work and just being college students, that they had the ability and dedication to pull off this movement. And it really was a movement that took so many years to happen, and so many generations of students really to happen. So for me, in kind of a faculty role, to be able to look at that, it made me really proud to be in academia and to see the power of the students to make change in an institution as old as a place like Brown, and to make it step by step a more positive place for Native students and other students of color to be.
This hate speech has got to fall, brick by brick, wall by wall. This hate speech has got to fall, brick by brick, wall by wall.
Bonjour, my name is Phoebe Young.
My name is Micah Sampson. Doli the net initially, na kaiklijini bashas chin, tachini dashache, na kaiklijini dashanale. Akot ego adzan nishla.
Yali da chu yali du, Denina Kenaga Chef Gun Kenash, Ruth Miller Shiji, Anchorage, Alaska Shugu Yastuda, Ekuk Etnan Shugu Shikaye Kilanda, Koyung Ethna Shiite, Shidaznaka, Heather Kendall Miller, Shunkda, Native American Rights Fund, Henuna Ethgun, Lloyd Miller Stukda, Stanoski Chambers, Henuna Ethgun, Hope Simon Chu Ruth Peterson Chichita Ena, Ruth Peterson Gila N, Ekuk Shugu Nakaye Kilanda, Jack Ferguson Chu Arthur Miller Shichada Ena, Arthur Miller Gila N, Chikanik Chinan Thuku Tits Na El Ninhadato, Chikanik Gali Kidiki, Yete Henal Bagud Yali Et Sete.
Yad Jasmine Ben Yinishia, Maideskish Ninishli, Tatna Zatni Bashachin, Kia Ani Dashache, Maideskishni Dashanella, Shema Gloria Ben Willia, Shaja Jimmy Ben Jr. Willia, Shema Sana Jean Bigay Willia Nit Aunt, Shache Hastine Bigay Willia Nit Aunt, Shanella Issa Lucy Ben Willia, Shanella Hastine, Jimmy Ben Sr. Willia, Jinle Dant Nasha, Brown University Inishta.
Yad she Karun Hurs Yinisha, Clash to Inishla, Dol Tatnasatni Bashashin, Sen Nahal Spitni Dashache, Dol Kia Ani Dashanele, Tuahajale De Nasha, Brown University de Inishta.
Chokma, Sahostifoat Elizabeth Wu, Chikasha Saya.
Sionagada Adrian Kindawado, Chichalagi.
Dagos Kanagolaga, Elizabeth Yungits, Ganyakahaga, and Nigama.
Hinaman Kima Haremba, Natatai Hamfibase, Tashurawem, Hoover Tia Taiwan.
Yat Jack Martin Unishia, Sina Jenny Nishle, Sina Bithni Bashichin, Nasht Ejidine Dashache, Ashahi Dashanella.
Yat Shidine, She Sierra Unisha, Klogan Nishle, Kit the Chitni Bashichin, Toda Chitni Dashache, Klizaflane Dashanella, Akot Ego Dine Atsan Nishle, Kintlane de Nasha, Brown University de Inchtap.